Emotion in games is something that is highly underrated and is an unsung hero of all the best games out there. If you think about your favorite games, single player especially, all the game of the years, normally they are infused with emotion and it's an underlying layer that actually kind of like gives you the ups and downs of the story that allows you to basically feel for the character. And I do think that animation has a lot to do with it based on my experience, and I want to talk about exactly how that actually translates to you as the animator, as the artist that actually wants to add that layer that even though you cannot like touch it or see it, but you can absolutely feel it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hello and welcome to another video. Now this video is very personal to me because I feel like emotion is something that gets dismissed a lot of the time, especially as the games industry evolves, mainly because we have this new era of first-person everything, I feel, and multiplayer everything. And I think the emotional part of the character gets dismissed because you don't really see a character, you see a weapon in front of you. Also, you want to like play the game quickly, have the game to be responsive, and basically just go in and out of the game really quickly. I think the biggest example that I can think of is definitely the Call of Duties of the world. Put a weapon in your hand and you really don't care about the character or the emotion of the character, you just care about shooting something. But there is a part of the games industry that requires emotion for you to really deeply feel about the characters that you're playing, right? And I think we all played games that we feel really emotional by the time we finish them, right? I know I did when I first finished my first Zelda game, for example, or The Last of Us. And animation has a lot to do with this emotion, this journey, this feeling that you have, this connection that you have for the character. And there's a lot of different departments that actually kind of like contribute to this. There's also audio, there's like the scripting, the voice acting, but animation, I believe, and obviously I'm biased because I'm an animator, but animation has a lot to do with it. So I made a list here that I'm going to go through with you guys to actually kind of like showcase exactly why certain aspects of animation are so important for emotion and why hopefully in the games that you're going to be making or you are making right now, they shouldn't be forgotten, because a lot of the time those nuances and those ups and downs that you want to take the player through, sometimes they don't hit, and half of the time is because people haven't thought about the emotional state of the character, and that is not translated to how the game is being played at this specific time. Now some of the animation techniques that everybody knows about that convey emotion is definitely facial animation, because when you see the face, you see the soul of the person. When you're looking at somebody and you're looking at them in their eyes, you are actually knowingly or unknowingly feeling their emotions, right? You actually are looking at somebody that you love, you're looking at somebody that you hate, and even though you're looking at the eyes only for the most part, you are feeling what they are feeling because you're analyzing the face. However, there's a lot of games out there that actually rush through the process of the facial animation, and you've all seen basically the cardboard feeling of the face that doesn't really convey anything to you. If anything, it makes you feel slightly uncomfortable to actually kind of like hear the words and the acting that sometimes is amazing, but when you look at the face, you don't see anything. And that actually breaks the illusion and the connection that you have with the character. You can have the best actor delivering the best lines and have the best script, but when you look at a game and you're looking at a character, doesn't matter if it's cutscene or in-game, and they are trying to say something, if that something is not well delivered, you don't buy it, and it feels almost like you're watching a kung fu movie. Anybody out there that has seen a kung fu movie back in the day, because I used to watch them a lot, you can tell by the way they are moving their lips that they are saying something meaningful, but it feels odd, it feels weird, and you don't buy it. And you are there for the fights, but when it comes to emotion and stuff, you're just there waiting for the next fight to happen. And it's kind of the same thing in game. And this is why The Last of Us is such well-reviewed game, such well-regarded game, because Naughty Dog took the time to make sure that those characters are relatable in every single aspect of the game. Specifically, the cutscenes that really need to drive home a specific element or beat in the game. And those kind of things are the things that you need to really invest time and money to make sure that those things really sell. Now, the second thing that is actually probably known by most people, maybe less known than facial animation, is basically the body language. Once again, if you think about the face and how certain games and certain studios don't really pay attention to the face, you can imagine that the body language is yet another thing that is even less thought of. And we humans think a lot and talk a lot with our bodies. And it's exactly the same thing yet again in games, right? You can have the most badass character that is actually always like superhero. However, if the character is not vulnerable at any point, doesn't actually showcase any vulnerability in terms of what they're trying to say, the character doesn't really land really well with anybody, because nobody is a superhero all the time. And you can say a lot with the body that basically conveys to the player what the character is feeling. Sometimes, and a lot of movies do this, you can be saying something and your body language is saying something completely different. So body language is another big element of you showing emotion in your games. And I do think that it's really important for you to think about that layer when you're thinking about the animations, when you're thinking about the characters. Now, the last one, and the one that people 100% don't think about a lot of the times, is timing and pacing. Now, this is one that we can borrow a lot from the films. I keep mentioning here in the channel, and I'll continue mentioning it, but one of my favorite directors is a director by the name of Brad Bird. He directed The Incredibles, The Iron Giant, and one of the things that he's a master of, I think, is timing and pacing. There is a time and place for everything in a film, and emotion is definitely one of the biggest things, that there's definitely a time and place for everything to happen. You want to make sure that you have a nice meal of quite a lot of highs, quite a lot of lows, and something in between. So you basically take the player through a journey of emotion in the game. And this is really important because you kind of have to constantly query about, is this character cool enough at this point? Is this character scared enough in this point? And not to bash into the Call of Duty series at all, but I think one of the things that series didn't do so well is that they want the character to actually be so cool that on the single player stories, as you play in the game, even though the mechanics are amazing, when you kind of just go through the first 10-15 minutes and you have actually done a few missions, you kind of realize that most likely going forward all the missions are going to be similar, and the tone of the missions are kind of similar, and the hype of the game is going to be similar, and the characters and the personalities are going to be similar. And I think that's a missed opportunity, because I do think that if you add what you are feeling as a player plus the conditions around you, I think you can basically augment what the player is feeling at any one point. Games are very much a interactive medium, and because they are such interactive medium, emotions play a massive part of this feeling that you are feeling when you go through a specific place. The best example that I can give you is horror movies. If you play Silent Hill, you have to push the stick forward to go to a certain place. You know something scary is behind a door, but you still open the door to see what happens. You still get scared, and this is basically the point of the game. However, you have the ups of the scare, but you also have the lows, and the longer you have a low, the longer you know that you're going to be scared, and most likely the scare is going to be even bigger because nothing has happened for so long. And this is the point of timing and pacing, right? To make sure that you kind of give the player like an evenness, but also entertainment on the highs and lows of the emotion that you're trying to make them feel. Now, as you work on your personal brand network, showcasing practical skills is absolutely crucial. One highly in-demand skill in 2024 is motion capture for games development. In fact, this can really help you set you apart from other applicants. So I created this course called Motion Capture for Games, and it takes you through everything from setting up your mocap to actually starting exporting it, cleaning it up at a very high level. So if you're serious about landing that dream job, mastering mocap could be your game changer. Check out my course if you want to know more, link down below. So when it comes to examples of games that I've worked previously, I think Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the best examples, because I worked as the lead cutscene animator for the first sequence when Aloy goes from being a child to being a woman, and it was actually really well written, and you really feel for her in her upbringing, being kind of raised by a father that was not her own, questioning the world that she was around. And then you have gameplay, so you're almost setting up what the character is going to feel at a later point and what the roots of the character are by the time you get to actually play as a grown woman. You connected with a character, which is really good as a player because you invested in this, right? Same thing with Link. I didn't work on Zelda, by the way, but same thing with the Link character. You spend so much time killing and achieving and overcoming different challenges that by the end, the journey is so epic that you feel like you've just witnessed something amazing, right? I want to take a moment to talk about a little bit about some of the things that I've done, but also some where the games industry can go that I don't think we have been there so much. Some games have, but I do think that we have to explore more, which is basically talking about emotionally driven animation in games. Because I think that a lot of games, when you actually are playing the game, you are in either a state of run or sprint, and you're rarely tired, and you rarely, when you get hit, you don't actually spend the time to actually kind of like feel the hit. So you get hit, but then you can react, and then you continue running and all these other things. So what I'm talking about when I say about emotionally driven animation is very much this idea that if you get hit, for example, where the way you run or the way you sprint, or maybe you cannot sprint, it's a direct impact of the world around you, right? And I think more games need to take advantage of this because it means that the player is interacting with the emotion within the game. So if you are hurt, there's going to be a time that you're going to have to spend until you actually kind of like recover from that pain, so you can then go back to your run in the sprint and be normal again. I think here the best example that I've seen is probably Red Dead Redemption. They had an amazing, very detailed animations where you could feel absolutely everything that the player felt. Doesn't matter if he was actually drunk, then the animations were different. If you were shot, then the animations were different. If you're carrying somebody on your shoulders, you felt the struggle. So there's all kinds of context-specific animations that allows you to feel the feelings that the player is feeling, and therefore allows you to be more immersed. And one of the things that people talk the most about that game is exactly the animations, because of how much they could feel and how much they felt like me as the player. I'm actually feeling these things and I can see it on the screen, which is great. So I think that's where we are going as an animation industry, fingers crossed, I think. So instead of actually like losing that emotion, I think we need to bring back more of that emotion, because being such an interactive medium, it helps you so much to kind of be immersed in the games. I do remember late 90s, early 2000s, it was a big thing for you to kind of start feeling more of those emotions on the character. There was also a lot of musical games that actually wanted to feel the music. So I think that there's so much that we can still do in animation to make things better, right? Now, I hope this actually has opened some doors in your mind on how you can improve your animations, how can you direct your animations. And if you are in a studio, if you're a designer and you're listening to this, I hope you actually come up with some cool design systems that involve animation and work together with animation to build these things, because there's nothing better in a game studio than having design and animation collaborating closely, because the amount of things that you can do, not only design-wise, but also animation-wise, to kind of like make a game better, it's limitless, really. And sometimes we, in the games industry, separate ourselves, and design works on a thing and then requests animation to do some things, and animation does the thing, but cannot really have a say on the design or suggest anything, which then means that the game is very much one-sided, because design doesn't really know what animation can do, and animation doesn't know what design wants to do. So it becomes separated and it's horrible. The best games out there, Insomniac, Spider-Man, for example, that's a good example. They work together hand in hand. God of War, the latest series, same thing. Design and animations, they actually work together and the game becomes better. The best example that I have of this is Nier Automata. So the Japanese game that came out that absolutely feels amazing and looks amazing to play. And they have a thing that I saw on a GDC talk that I tried to link down below, which they call the Animation Design Director. And it's actually a really cool title, and I wish more studios had this, where the animation design director, I believe that was the name, he actually designs the motion and the emotion in the game, so the player feels a certain thing in specific places. So obviously you're swinging your sword and doing this thing, all that stuff, but there's going to be moments that you perhaps have a different view of the character, so emphasizes a different place, right? So it kind of gives you the best of design and animation into one, and this person is there to kind of bridge the gap between the two because the person understands both things really, really well. Okay, the video is long enough, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have, don't forget to subscribe, give it a like, and comment down below about your favorite games when it comes to emotional feeling, and that ride that basically when you stop the game, you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this game is finished. I wish I could play it again and again and again. Until next week, stay well, stay safe, peace.